morning, good morning. I'm talking to you today about world building. What world building is an interesting conversation for writers of the future and anybody who's writing out of the present day context. When you're writing a story that requires you to develop a different world, a different place, you have to take time to construct that world. That process is called world building. Sometimes the world that you build becomes a character, just like the characters and the actors and the people you draw, the weapons that they have. Sometimes the world becomes a tool to drive your story, meaning that if the story did not take place in that world, it would be a different story. Easy examples of that is fantasy. Two come to mind: Alice in Wonderland and The Wizard of Oz. Both of those stories had to have worlds developed for them because they took place in either Oz or Wonderland. Futuristic worlds are very important because you want to necessarily get the future right. You have to study the world that we live in today and then sort of exaggerate an aspect of it. There's no real way to be 100% correct unless you're a time traveler. And if you are a time traveler, then you already know what I'm going to say. But you don't have to totally construct a full world. You only have to construct the world that pertains, the aspects of the world that pertains to your story. You don't have to know how they make their food. You don't have to know how they go to the bathroom. You don't have to know how they promote kids from one grade to the next, or whether they have schools or not. You can leave a lot of that the same as the world that we live in. But the aspects of the world that pertain to your story are the aspects of the world that you need to develop. Sometimes world building requires you to think of your story first, so that you know what aspects of the world you're going to touch base with. However, there's ways to develop your world before you write your story to give you a better idea of where the settings of your story. So, meaning you can think of your story, this is Alice, she's going to go to Wonderland, and then, develop Wonderland, and then say, okay, this is what else. But you need to know she's going to see the Queen, is going to be a Yellow Brick Road. All of those different elements you need to kind of know before you develop your world, or else you'd be like, how do I get this, world developed? So there are some easy tools. One, have a story, kind of have a loose outline, right? You don't have to have a finalized outline because your world may give you ideas for your story and where you want to go. But give you an example, two other worlds that I'll mention. In Black Panther, you had the world of Wakanda, which was a character in the story. They had advanced technology. Did we see how they educated the people? Did we see how they did what they did for relaxation? Did they have bowling? Did they have movie theaters? No, we didn't know that, but we did know what they did for their ceremonies because the story demanded that. We did know their technology in terms of how advanced it was because the story demanded that. But other things we don't know about Wakanda. We saw them walking down the street, and that was beautiful, but we don't know if they use so much of their own currency, if they have banks, if there's investment. No, we didn't know that. We didn't actually go into anybody's house because it wasn't important for the story. What else? Another world that I like to reference is in Avatar. Avatar, the Blue People, the James Cameron Avatar. That world played a big role in the story. Number one, it was an unfriendly world, or a world that wasn't so welcoming to humans because they couldn't breathe the air. Also, it was a larger world. The human sentient beings were bigger than the human sentient beings. They had different types of animals. They had a spirit element to the world that was manifested as in a real connected way. The humanoids that were there, the Na'vi people, they had to be developed in a relationship to the world. So you couldn't just say, these were some big, tall people. Their color blended in with the story. Their tails connected to the animals. It connected them to the spirit world, the flower elements from the trees. All of that had to be developed before you start telling your story, because he wondered what that tail was when he was first checking out his avatar. So you had to develop that in your story and in your world from the very beginning. So that's something that illustrates the need to kind of share and develop your world that you're building. So you have to get your outline, your story together. If your story takes place over a geographic area, another thing you need to do is use a map. Draw a map. This is Mordor. This is Middle Earth. Let me draw out Middle Earth. This is, where I forgot the name of the world for Game of Thrones. But in fantasy, you have to draw maps. Even in multi-planeted stories, drawing a planetary map is also important. So, yes, if you're doing Wizard of Oz, you might need a map. Even though you are telling your story in a novel, you kind of want to know where things are, where your characters are in the story, how far other things are from them, even if you don't necessarily say, oh, he's now closer to this place, which is nearer to this other place and around the corner from this place. You don't necessarily have to say that in your story for a map to be important. But a map gives you a reference point. They pass this place, then they pass this place, then they pass this place, then they pass this place. So now you got to have a reference point so that way if they come back across this area, you don't confuse the readers because you know where things are. So that's the importance of having a map and developing to help you develop your world. Another exercise that I do to kind of help the creative process. One of the things I like to do in creating things in the brainstorming process is when you're brainstorming over names for characters, weapons, kill scenes, you don't just stop at the number of them that you need. You kind of go over and you keep going until you finish exhausting your ideas, until you get all the last ideas out of your head. Well, one of those other things you do when you're brainstorming in terms of world building, or you can do, one of the things that I do, is I try to describe the world in as much totality as I can think of, period. Even if I'm not going to use it in the story, I like to, whatever I think of regarding the world, I want to write it down. So one of the things that gives me an idea is, and I try to answer the questions that people may have about my world. So what I do is I write a travel brochure to my world, because when people are interested in going to a place, they pick up a travel brochure. And the travel brochure tells you the hot spots, tells you the type of world that you're going into, the culture, the language they speak, how old it is, the significant monuments and places. All of those things are really cool, to create and think of separately from writing your story, because then those are things that you can reference regardless of whether you're going to go to them or not. What type of government do they have? What type of currency do they have? All those things. Heck, how do they go to the bathroom? All those things are important. So why don't you, and try it and give somebody your travel brochure. There's a big pit in the center, and they kick people in, and they say, "This is Sparta." That's cool, but you got to make sure that you think of it, because at the moment you start to build your world, to construct your set, to draw your pictures, you need to know in the center of town there's a big pit that they kick people in, like in the movie 300. There's sections of Sin City, all those things. And world building is not only just for fantasy, space stories and things of that nature. It is for any story that contains a city that doesn't exist. If you're using an existing city, like I did in Harlem Shake, then the reality is there. So you just tell your story around the existing buildings, and that's the end of it. But if you're telling your story in a fictitious building, like I was in Thug Angel, Rebirth of a Gargoyle, then you gotta kind of say, all right, let me sit this on the map, like they did in Wakanda. They said, all right, this is where Wakanda is. And many of us, weren't totally familiar with where Wakanda was and what was there in Africa, Central Congo region, Central Africa. Those are real countries that Wakanda was actually sitting on top of. And those people are like, wait a minute, we're here. So you kind of got to, if you're going to do a 53rd state or a 55th state, and you're going to sit it in the middle of America, you got to realize, wait a minute, there's other states there. So you got to know what's going on. But anyway, I gave you a few things in terms of world building. Brainstorm forever, create a map, write your outline in your story first, and then do a travel brochure for your world. All right, that's it. I hope this is helpful. Again, check me, Jeff Carroll, on Amazon. Check out some of the books and films and comic books that I have out. And that's it. I hope this helps. Peace.